What's up, everybody? So this is going to be a Facebook Live that I'm going to actually also post onto my podcast, which is the first time I've ever done that. I've done 60 some episodes and they've all just been audio. They're all just on podcast directories. They're not on YouTube. They're not on Facebook. That's the only place you can get my podcast. But I wanted to record something like a solo podcast, just kind of off the cuff. So this is going to be my first Facebook Live podcast I've ever done. Okay, I don't want to get distracted by people popping on and off. It's going to really sound different. So let's do this. I'm taping something here, so I can't see who's watching. So the title that I have here is When a Guy Offers Me Money for Sex. And really what I want to talk about today is this cultural overlay or this cultural blueprint that each culture has, where it kind of shapes men's beliefs around how they see women, and also how things are often blended together. Like there's not a separation. And we have this at different degrees. We have this in the US for sure. I'm going to give examples of that even with clients. And then we have examples of this of like really conservative cultures, like the guy today who offered me $300 extra. He wanted to rent my space. He actually came to my house. This wasn't just an online thing. $300 extra for me to have sex with him during the month. Insulting, right? Insulting. We're so much more. Okay. So let me first tell you this story, and then I'll kind of backtrack and really even talk about how I see this with clients and whatnot. So I rent out the basement of my house, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. I rent out my basement on a short-term basis through Airbnb or Craigslist. So 1 month, 2 months at a time is typically what I rent. So I don't have roommates. I have people kind of in and out on a short-term basis. So this guy messaged me a few days ago, Sunday, saying that he had just getting into the US. He was going to be studying at the U of M at the medical center for 1 month, and that he was studying in Turkey. He's from Dutch. I don't think he's actually Dutch. And he just needed a space to stay for the month. And I thought, okay, great, fine. Let's come over and meet and we'll see if it's a good fit. So he was going to come, didn't come. Finally, he came today. And I gave him a window of an hour that when he could come, and he came to my house. And then the time left, and he texts me. So I came to your house, but I really dislike the neighborhood. That's why I decided not to come in. So he came to my house. He didn't like the neighborhood. It wasn't up to his standards. So then he left. So what is that little thing on there? Okay. So, and I just said, no problem. Don't worry about it. Thanks for letting me know. And then he started asking me, can I see a picture of you? Now that I've seen your house, maybe if you look nice, if you're a nice and warm lady, maybe I could still want to move in. It was just scary. I'm reading this where I'm looking at the text, so I'm looking over at. So I just think this part's kind of funny, because this would happen a lot when refugees would come to our country, because I used to be like a mentor to a refugee family. And it's really common that foreigners come to the US and they expect that we all live in these mansions and we have so much money. And then they see the average American house and they're like, oh, like this is where you live, because I live in Northeast Minneapolis, the arts district of Northeast. It's not fabulous. But it's also the street could be in any neighborhood in like small town, medium town, USA, around the country. But for him, it was like a scary neighborhood if it didn't feel good. He never actually came in my house. That was just his interpretation. He came right outside of my house and then left. Okay, so now he's asking for a picture. So, I just said, if you're near, why don't we just say hi? I don't need to send you a picture. It's more about, seeing, like, meeting and connecting and see if we get along. And then he said, well, what if we have a really, really good connection? Would you have a problem having sex now and then? And I said, well, oh my gosh, why are you saying this to me? I thought this was about you feeling scared in my neighborhood. So the funny thing here is it shifted from, he came to my house, he looked at my neighborhood, he was like, oh, this neighborhood is poor, right? This is a scary, crappy neighborhood, which I think is interesting because then he starts speaking to me differently. Like I'm a poor woman that's single, 36 years old, which maybe to him is probably old too, right? There's a shift. And then how this conversation goes. Well, you just say, well, if we connect really well and we're housemates, I'm 23, you're 36. I'm just saying, why not? And I said, no, it would never happen. I've lived with many guys. And then he said, well, that's a shame. And then I just said, best of luck finding a place, basically. That's it. And then he starts messaging me again. Well, it's just that if we have to be housemates, it could be a lot of fun, and that's all. And then he starts proposing different offers. Well, $1,100 in rent, which is more than I was asking. $700 deposit, or if we have a lot of fun, I could bump it up to $1,200 rent and $600 deposit. Think about it. Let me know. And then okay, question mark. And then he calls, and then he calls again, and then no, question mark, and then oh, come on. And then can you respond, question mark. So I think this is, and I responded finally after I made, 7 bullet points that I responded with, but I don't want this video to be about my righteousness of like getting him a good job. I'm taking other action of connections at the U of M that clearly would be connected with him. But I think it's really interesting. Like I had said in there, clearly you're not Dutch, and he says, well, I am Dutch, but obviously I don't think his parents are Dutch, especially judging by his name that he emailed me with. But I think this is really interesting because I think this really shows that there's some cultures, and I have other stories too, where it's like, if a man and a woman are in a room together alone, then that has to mean sex. Like there's not like a separation, right? Like to them, it just blends all together. It's like, I look at it as we all have these blueprints of our belief systems. So, we can talk about how men view women, but it's very different from culture to culture and then subcultures and families and whatnot, right? Of like dynamics of how men view women. I went to, if you guys have listened to my podcast before, I have been to an event called Awesomeness Fest a couple times. And it's this amazing, positive event with, thought leaders from all over the world. And, we're staying in a 5-star resort. It's incredible experience. And both times I went, I ended up rooming with a guy, and it was no big deal, right? Not a big deal. Stayed in separate beds. We're barely in our room anyway at this resort. And the first time this happened, I was staying with this Canadian guy, super sweet guy. And at the end of the week, this Malaysian guy comes up to me, and he was like fascinated that I was staying with this guy. I had this guy roommate for the week, and he kept asking me questions about it. And I'm like, what's this dude like? Why is he obsessed with me staying with this guy? And then he says, well, because if that were me staying with you, I would expect that you would have sex with me. And I was like, whoa, I'm at this super positive, empowering event, and a man is speaking to me like this. He's from Malaysia. Clearly, the way that he's speaking, he's from a very conservative background. So for him, the idea of being in a room with a woman would mean that he would have to stick his penis in her, because that would be the expectation. There couldn't be just like a friendship, right? There couldn't just be another type of connection. It's like things get blurred, and then that would be the expectation, because that is his blueprint of his culture. So I feel like, so as far as me working with clients, I've been, years ago, I used to not work with guys because, it kind of intimidated me whenever a guy would say he wanted to work with me, it always ended up that he was just hitting on me, right? Or, so there was this fear of the boundary, or, fear of like a lack of trust in myself, basically, of setting the boundary or what that would look like. And I had this, it was actually the next Awesomeness Fest I was at. I had this kind of shift in my belief system of like, I think I'm meant to work with men, and, I don't want to hold back of who I am and what my purpose is to not serve these guys that I'm in alignment to working with. So at this event, there was a guy who was from the Middle East, and he was studying his MBA in Paris, and he kept asking me for an energy healing session at the end of the week. And this is where I was kind of leery. I was like, I don't know. He's like kind of flirting with me too. And I don't know, does he really want that? And then I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it. And we had this really incredible experience where he opened up. He was emotional. He was crying. He told me that he never thanks people in his life. He just lives his life expecting that people should do things out of being in integrity, that he doesn't even say thank you. And we had this like incredible session where our hearts were both just really open, and he hugged me at the end and said thank you. And I just felt like my heart exploded. I walked out of there just being like, I can't keep that from men because I'm scared of the boundary, right? As long as I'm intentional about what my boundary is, then that's okay, right? Like and this guy, he was more progressive for how he was raised. But there was still a shift in even just like having emotional intimacy. So when it comes to, I've evolved a lot over the years, where I would say most of my clients, half my clients right now, the past 6 months, most of my clients have been men. So I work with men. I'm comfortable working with men. And, so we're going to say, well, we're talking about the good old US of A now and the blueprint of this culture. And I will say that, okay, it's not like some of these other examples that I'm talking about, but there is there is a blueprint that people have a hard time of separating things. So let me explain. So when I'm working with a client, whether I'm doing energy work or, any type of emotional release, emotional embodiment work, I have a good amount of intimacy with a client. I have, just a lot of emotional intimacy. Hearts are open, there's safety. And, what I found, it is not uncommon that the guy that I'm working with will say something to me at some point, whether they tell me they have a crush on me, whether they tell me I had some sexual fantasy about you, or I guess, a while ago I had one client that like asked his friend if they thought that I liked him because he thought that there was something happening during the session. So nothing that I with, even the sexual fantasy, it wasn't like they were suggesting anything. They were just sharing that was there for them. And I don't want to ever shame people for having sexual desires. I think that's also really important because we can suppress so often that often that's also why this stuff is coming up. So it's not uncommon that because I'm creating so much intimacy with my clients that, sometimes they'll think that it's more because within our culture, how much emotional intimacy are guys used to having even with their romantic partners? Not that much, right? A lot of them don't even have that much emotional intimacy with their partners or with their family or like close friends. So when they're able to really feel safe and go deep with me, then a part of them, this is where there's not the separation. A part of them is like, what does this mean? To me, I have to categorize this. And again, going back to the penis, do I have to stick my penis in this person? Because that's the connection of I have to do something with my penis and having emotional intimacy. So that I feel like is common in the US. What my example from today was, if I'm going to sleep in this under the same roof as a woman, then we're probably going to have sex because that makes sense, right? There's like not a separation. I've had this with a potential client this past year too, who was interested in working with me. And we just had a conversation. To me, it was like a normal conversation, but I go deep with people. I go really deep with people. And to me, it's just normal. It's just an everyday conversation. And I could like, oh my gosh, is he like, I think he's planning our wedding. Like thinks that we're in a relationship now, or like thinks there's something happening. So I just want to give these different examples that, I think that there's these gradual shifts that are happening, but a lot of them come down to this not being able to separate one thing from another, right? And thinking, well, because of this, then this means this, or like that expectation, right? Because my heart is open to this person, this must mean we're in romantic love, right? Like we can be in love, right? And not have it be romantic and not have it be sexual. And if we're progressing as humans, like this is really what we're moving towards, this ability just to leave our house and open our hearts and have these connections with people, and being able to have this emotional intimacy without the fear of, well, what's going to happen, the fear of having the boundaries crossed. So, the stuff that happened today is definitely, it threw me off a little bit, but it inspired me to make this video. And I am going to talk to somebody at the U that will be connected with this person. Just so, and it's not that I want to punish this person. I want them to understand that this isn't okay to talk to women or to make these assumptions. So I think it's good to, even while having these, to have the boundary, but still have compassion, right? Like I have compassion for this person. This person was brought up this way. This is their blueprint. And it's time that we start evolving out of these blueprints that are really hurtful and disempowering to women. But, we need to create some space for compassion and for it to help people to be aware of this, besides just screaming and yelling, which can often be the exciting or the pleasurable thing to do at the time. But I have compassion for, honestly, a lot of the people in my story, and even clients, I have so much love for male clients that I've had, and there's always space for people to feel what they're feeling. And it's also really important that we respect each other's boundaries and not speak degrading to women or to anyone else. So that is my little solo podcast rant. It seems like a lot of people hopped on from my personal page. Thanks for listening. And I am going to put a link to my podcast, Badass Spiritual Warriors. So like I said, this was my first Facebook Live that I'm actually going to make into a podcast, which it will just be audio. But otherwise, you can only find my podcasts in podcast directories, iTunes. You can't find it on YouTube. You can't find it on Facebook. This will be the only episode as of right now that I have available. So feel free to share it with anyone or say something in the comments if you desire, and I will talk to you guys soon.